care of that position and the duties that that person did after they're retired, if they haven't yet. I believe they're gone. But I think you just have to tough it out because you haven't straightened out that budget. Something like over 600,000, I believe. Thank you.
William Burdell, resident. I'm going to agree with Mr. Servio. I think until the issue is addressed, I would postpone that for 2 weeks or till the next meeting and get that thing figured out. The one thing I want to address is the election coming up. It's a state issue about this proposed 17% increase in the sales tax. I'm a product of the public schools, and I don't know if anyone's had 8th grade shop math, but 7 is 116.6% more than 6. So when you see people on the news saying that it's a 1% increase in the sales tax, a 1% increase in the sales tax should be 6.06. So if you bought something for $100, your sales tax would be $6.20. That's right. Yeah, you're right, $6.06. So this is a 17% increase in the sales tax. Now, people who are established, it might not affect you as much if you're older. But if you're younger and you're starting out and you're buying durable goods, and you're maybe go out to eat or whatever, it's going to hit you. My estimates is it would cost every man and woman between $400 to $600 a year, depending on what type of durable goods you buy and how much you go out to eat and so forth. Also, your car registration is going to be more. The gas tax should be kept on the gas tax. Now, Mr. Snyder didn't raise the gas tax because it was a political year. So he's electing to have us cut our own throat and vote to shoot ourselves in the foot and vote for a 17% increase in the sales tax. He's throwing a couple bones at the public schools that he's trying to bust the teachers union with, and you know he's trying to do that. He's trying to fight the union lobby. That's what he's trying to do. You know, you might think teaching is some type of glamorous job. It's not. No, taking care of everyone's kids is not a glamorous job. So he's going to throw a couple bones to the school, then he's going to steal it back again when he needs the money. He's going to steal from Peter to pay Paul. It's the same story around and round and round, and that's the same thing with these budgets. Each department should be a separate entity. Keep your finances straight, keep your finances in order. You know when you're losing money, you know when you're not losing money. You can see the writing on the wall. So, 2 things. Postpone number F on the agenda till next week till you find out what's going on. And I urge everyone to vote no on Mr. Snyder's 17% money grab. Calls himself a Republican, but he's grabbing 17% of your sales tax. It's an increase. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Karczewski, resident. First of all, I agree with some of the speakers that talked before. First of all, before you hire somebody for the fire department, if you're going to lay off firemen, why don't you see if maybe one of them would like that job instead of being laid off? If that's what it's going to come down to. Offer them the job before you give the job to anybody else. Second of all, I was asked by a number of residents this morning that if I came to the meeting today, they would like to know, Mr. Supervisor, if you could please explain in plain English exactly what this proposal is that's coming up about the sales tax. where the money's going for, because they have heard from different people that it's 1 cent more, but then he's gonna take money from the gasoline tax and put it for this, and then that sales tax is going for that. So if somebody has, in plain English, could please say exactly what it is and where the money's going for. Personally, I think 1 cent more on goods would be better than paying 20 cents more on gasoline tax. Isn't that gonna be the difference? If that doesn't go, he's gonna add more to the gasoline tax. So I'd like to know, besides me, there was a number of residents that I spoke with this morning. They asked me if I came here. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board. Andy Hood, President, Firefighters Association. Mr. York alluded in the beginning of the meeting about whether we're in negotiations or not. We are not. We have just received a copy of a draft contract incorporating the arbitration award. We're in the process of reviewing it prior to signature. Additionally, if the board is going to choose to lay off firefighters and/or reduce the level of firefighters in any of the fire stations, I would encourage the board to add as an agenda item and bring it back to a public comment, have public debate on the issue before they made any decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Rice, Harrison Township. I wonder how many of you gentlemen have served and honorably served with a discharge in the United States military service. If any of you had, would you please stand? Well, today is the beginning of a change in Michigan and in the United States. And it's supplemented by
I can pass them down if you want to grab them.
supplemented by this article that was in Crane's Business this morning. And this article explains the difference in the cost of the military, and those costs are depreciated through the elimination of, I would say, 85% of the flying vehicles at Selfridge Air Force Base. That's what's proposed. I think that this board doesn't realize the vitality that Selfridge Air Force Base brings to this community. And I would like to see the brass band come out of this organization to support the need and the strong military at Selfridge Air Force Base. It's been since 1917, I believe, I may be off a couple of years,
That's it.
that Selfridge has been the strongest in this side of our nation for support for flying fighters and vehicles that transport troops and other accommodations. We, in the infancy of my relationship sitting on that very board, I could see him cutting trees down within a week of the time my father passed away, paralleling Selfridge Air Force Base, getting ready to move in some of your very friends, a new shipping yard alongside of the railroad tracks that serve Selfridge Air Force Base. It'll be over my dead body before that SOB will come in, I'll tell you that right now. You people need to be in front. This is the first exposure to the state of Michigan, and that's article in Crane's Business this morning. You need to be in front of that conversation, not behind. And I know a lot of you go to the base for the base community council, but you need to listen when people are talking, because we are shrinking in this country in our military. All right? I have a great neighbor, Digger Odell, who's suffered the images of a concentration camp. All right? You folks that have never served don't understand what the perils of that are. You don't realize how valuable this country is. You need to get off your ass and support Selfridge Air Force Base and fight the demolition. And as they call it on television, ISIS. It's not. It's ISIS. Pronounce it like we spell in the United States, not in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Sensak, 31698 San Juan. I want to comment briefly on, again, I believe that this closed session is illegal, and I want to make sure that that's noted on the television, because it will be noted later on. Secondly, the decision to hire a departmental secretary in the fire department is the most irresponsible thing I've ever heard, and I've heard some pretty irresponsible things out of this board that I've ever heard. How can you as managers, with over a $250,000 deficit in the fire department currently, with the odds that it's going to go to $500,000 by the end of the year, consider hiring somebody who's going to answer a phone, do some time cards, and maybe type some letters. The chief can do that stuff. The chief, obviously, who has been over there for this long, hasn't done much about getting that budget under control. He could at least handle the phones. I hope you guys realize that if you hire a secretary, you are putting her in jeopardy of being laid off in the future also. That's not fair to a new hire. It's not. She's going to be the first one to go, even though the chief doesn't want to answer his own phones. So please, don't make the mistake. It's going to come back to haunt you guys if you make that mistake. You're supposed to be managers. On the issue of the young lady that got up here that said she wanted somebody to give her a straight up answer on Proposal 1, it's no good. Straight up. Proposal 1, let's just talk about it. 1% on a $25,000 car is $250. Don't buy one. Don't be planning on buying a car. At least get it before this thing passes. Or how about a refrigerator for $2,000? That's $20. The governor has completely ignored the effect that having this extra 1% is going to have on everything, other than he says, well, it won't affect the gas prices. It'll actually only be 3 cents more total, because it's going to reduce the gas price and then it's going to raise it, whatever he says. The fact is, a 1% increase in your sales tax affects every single thing you do, including your gas bills, everything. Your gas, your electric, all of that stuff is affected. So don't be snookered. You know what? If they wanted to fix the roads, they could get the roads fixed. It's amazing to me to watch all the people jump onto the bandwagon, because here's a chance for another group of money, a bunch of money, to give to the buses, to give to the schools, to give to the governments, Harrison Township, etc., to give to everybody. And oh, by the way, we'll throw some in for the roads too. So don't be fooled, people. It's terrible. And I'll tell you what, Linda, if you really need to know about this thing, come see me afterwards. I can't talk about the whole thing right now, but I'll tell you. It's terrible. The other thing that I thought I had something else. Boy, can you imagine I actually forgot? Dang, isn't that something? Wow. You know what? Maybe we'll just talk about Proposal 1 some more. Proposal 1 is definitely based on what they want to do. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Oh, I remembered now. Everybody should also remember, in fact, recently in the last about 2 or 3 weeks, one day I opened up the Macomb Daily, or maybe it was the Detroit News, and on the front page, plastered on the front page, was the fact that they want to raise, or they want to make the internet people pay a tax. Well, it's not going to be a 6% tax. It's going to be a 7% if they get their chance. Right next to it, they were talking about Proposal 1. I mean, this governor, who is supposedly a Republican, has proposed more taxes than any Democrat ever could have. And you know what? We're supposed to believe him. I don't believe him. I didn't vote for him, and I don't believe him. And for me to say I didn't vote for a Republican governor is unbelievable. But I didn't vote for him. We have got to, everybody has got to make up their mind that we're going to force our elected officials, and I mean all of them, this board, our state reps, our state senators, we're going to force them to become more accountable and more fiscally responsible. There's no, I mean, I've been accused of being the nasty guy and not in favor of the fire department and everything, but when we start talking about laying off firefighters, because you guys ain't running the business right, something's wrong. I'm not, and when we talk about laying off firefighters and ending up hiring a clerk so that the chief doesn't have to do his own work, which every business in this state requires their managers to run their own letters, to answer their own phone calls, to take care of their own time cards. And the people that work below him take care of their time cards. And anything else that he could conceivably think he's going to have this clerk do, he can't do. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Mr.
So-
Senstock, your timer went off about a minute ago, and you made that point earlier that you felt it was a poor hire. If you could,
Oh,
just kinda
okay.
wrap it up.
Well, I didn't.
I didn't know if anybody heard
I
it
didn't
or
hear
not.
it go.
I was trying to be
That's what I
respectful,
thought.
but
I didn't hear
you were
it.
kind of
That's
repeating
what I
yourself,
thought.
and the
That's why
timer
I
went off.
sort of
So,
mentioned that. I did it
please.
quick.
One follow-up or one final remark on the hiring. Don't make that mistake. If I had my druthers, I'd rather have the firefighters there than a clerk. Even though they might not believe that. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. Just a clarification, someone had mentioned various deficits in the fire fund. The current deficit shown in the fire fund budget for 2015 is not 600,000. I believe the board adopted an amendment to the budget at our last meeting that showed that deficit as 219,000. In conversations since then, we realized that one of the agreements that was added to the fire contract was to encourage, to incentivize opt-out from the health care for current employees. And so that savings is somewhere in the $25,000 to $28,000 range. So as the as the budget stands currently, the adopted budget for the fire department had a deficit in about 219,000. We realized that since that time, there were two employees that opted out, and based on that, that savings is, or that deficit is just under 200,000, based on our best estimate at this point. There was a comment made, several comments about delay hiring the fire secretary, and that the chief should answer his own phone. I think it's important to note that the position that we're proposing not to increase but to fill involves a lot more than answering phones. The current budget includes in it this clerical person being staffed. The board did take a look at what the duties were, and we were able to go to a lower classification. And because of the fact that in previous AFSCME contracts we have tiered benefits, the cost to replace the person that recently retired is a fair amount less. I can't give you a number right now, but it's literally a lower classification, so it's a lower salary, and it comes with a lower level of benefits and an increased amount of participation and out-of-pocket costs in some cases. So I think that's worth noting. I do think it's important, though, if I can take a moment to kind of point to the chief here, to address what some of those other duties are so that the residents and the board fully understands what that position entails.
All right, good evening, board members. The department secretary position, as the supervisor said previously, was an administrative assistant. Its classification was reduced to department secretary for the purposes of this hire. That position serves not only as my secretary or my assistant, but also the secretary for the entire fire department. As you all know, there are no other 40-hour personnel, so the firefighters take on a great deal of additional work in terms of fire inspections and other coordinated activities of ordering supplies. So that department secretary is also the administrative support for the firefighters and all of those tasks as well. So that includes the liaison with the EMS billing company, working with them, ensuring that our information is submitted timely so that we get payment, EMS payment to deposited promptly, uploading the NFIRS reports, filling out paperwork for our annual licensing, as well as, like I said, administrative support to the fire inspectors at tracking their fire inspections and entering that information into the computer system as well. There's the liaison with the accounting office for payroll purposes. So it's all encompassing and serving the entire department. I think it would be a great understatement to suggest that it's merely a position that works as my secretary answering my phone. That really doesn't do that position justice at all.
Okay. There was a question that was proposed. Perhaps the township should offer the clerical job to the firefighters first. Just like we can't necessarily say that we're going to hire AFSCME personnel to perform as firefighters. Likewise, I mean, we'll say when unions come in and organize various departments, they literally and specifically organize certain positions. So we can't hire an AFSCME firefighter, and we really can't hire an IAFF clerical person. Those are clearly spelled out in the contract. You know, the question was, explain in plain English the 1 cent sales tax. I'll say that's an awful challenging request. It's a fairly complicated proposal, and I think the reason why it's complicated is because our current funding model is complicated. I think it's excessively complicated. So at least in some basic terms, regardless of whether you're for the proposal or against the proposal, one important statistic is that the state of Michigan pays in state taxes at the pump, either the highest or the fifth highest, certainly one of the highest amounts of total taxes at the pump. And so when we take a look at the amount of money that's spent on road repairs or road funding, what we find is that it's toward the bottom end. And again, I know there was a time when I could have said it was first, second, third, or 48th, 49th, 50th. The problem is because the gas tax on fuel that's dedicated to road funding is a flat tax of 19 cents per gallon. The last time that number was changed was 1997. Since 1997, we buy less gas and everything costs more. So the ability to, if 19 cents bought you, 500 miles of roads a year, 19 cents a gallon doesn't buy you the same amount. It isn't a percent of the cost of gas. It's a flat amount per gallon. So as cars have become more efficient, a lot of other things have changed. The actual revenue has gone down and the cost of repairing roads has gone up. However, since there's a sales tax applied to gas, that is per dollar. So if it were 6 cents on a dollar, it's 18 cents on a $3 gallon of gas. The problem is folks say, well, the cost of gas in Michigan is higher than it is in another state. But if gas were $3 a gallon, 18 cents of what you're paying at the pump is currently being used, whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, to fund all sorts of other things other than road repairs. So the first thought is, well, stop paying sales tax on gas and instead take that 18 cents, if it were $3, and dedicate it to the roads. The problem is now you've taken funding from several other budgets within the state budget. Now again, not speaking to whether it's a good idea, whether it's a bad idea, the issue that we have is sales tax being applied to gas, yet using it for something other than repairing roads is the initial problem that the legislature tried to fix. So by taking that sales tax away and replacing it with what they call a wholesale tax, which is a percentage tax as opposed to a fixed per gallon tax, it would be able to ratchet up over time as the cost of gas goes up. That's one fix. Instead of having a flat per gallon tax, it's a percent tax. So that was one thing the state tried to accomplish by going this way. By taking the sales tax off, replacing it with another tax, that's the reason why the proposal suggests that the cost of fuel could be different. Could be, only 3 cents a gallon, somebody mentioned. I don't know what the estimates are. So that's the idea behind at least that change. Sales tax is dedicated to fund several other things. So one of the things that was included in the proposal was additional funding for schools, additional funding for municipalities, and a guarantee or some sort of legislation that would prevent the money that was destined for schools to be taken away and used for higher education. Some of the school districts and some of those involved in school funding felt that earlier, a few years back, the state legislature took money that was dedicated to schools and shifted that money to community colleges or higher education. So one of the things that they proposed in this was to fix that. There's a lot of other moving parts. Unfortunately, there isn't a, for lack of a better word, a plain English answer. Whether you like it or don't like it, there's a lot of moving parts in there. And I think if for no other reason, part of the problem is our current method of funding roads and taxing gasoline is pretty screwed up. So whatever solution is going to come, it's also going to be kind of a complicated solution. I have heard folks say, well, why didn't the legislature just solve the problem? Why are they throwing it back to the residents or to the voters? Again, good or bad, whether you agree or not, there's two reasons for that. One is the state has some limited means by which they can just impose a tax. A sales tax, in this case, has to be approved by the voters. And second of all, I think for those people in Lansing, whether you like this proposal or don't like this proposal, I personally like the idea that they said, this is what we think is a solution. Here you go. You can vote yes or no. So I have as much control as I can have as a citizen, as a voter, to say that I do or don't like this. So I don't know that I necessarily agree that Lansing screwed up by giving us the choice. I like to think that the chance to vote on it, for me, is better than having a tax imposed over which I have no control. There was also a comment made about Selfridge Air Base, the need to preserve the mission. I absolutely agree. I've been outspoken in the media, participating in Base Community Council. We brought a resolution to SEMCOG. Regardless of so many other moving parts, you have to remember that thousands of people are employed as a result of that base, number one. Number two, nobody lives there. So when I have a chance to explain in plain English what Selfridge means to us, Selfridge is like a gigantic cereal bowl turned upside down. And every day the federal government pours millions of dollars in the form of milk into that cereal bowl. But it doesn't stay in the cereal bowl. It hits that top of that bowl and it sprays all over. So the people who are employed at Selfridge are citizens in our community. They're members of our congregation of our church. They're students in our schools. I've heard folks say, well, wouldn't it be great if they could close Selfridge because then all that land could be developed and there'd be additional taxable value. History suggests that the federal government doesn't take that approach. They mothball the facility. So what happens is that flow of millions of dollars of federal money that hits that bowl and scatters, it stops. So now the population of our community drops. Homes are vacant. Schools lose funding because they have less students. Literally, the people sitting in the pew next to you at church are gone. So we absolutely have to fight to keep the mission at Selfridge. The most current discussions that I've been involved in, and I serve on a committee through the county chamber, is in concert with what General Vadnais, who is the National Guard, he's the adjutant general, I think if I pronounce that right, but basically the appointed leader of the National Guard for the state of Michigan. There's a need in the short term to preserve the current mission. There's lots of discussion that the A10 is still a viable platform. There's also discussion, the second wave or second arm of this process is that eventually the A10 will go away. In its place, we absolutely have to see a fighter mission replace the A10 mission, because if all it is a tanker mission, it's just too easy to let the base go. So there is a lot of work, not only on the part of Harrison Township, but on the part of other organizations and other community members and leaders, as well as base community council, trying to get that message across. Unfortunately, in less than a couple years, we're going to lose one of the base's greatest advocates in Congresswoman Miller, but hopefully we'll be able to get someone else to continue to deliver that message. Other board comments?
I thought I saw on the website today that there was a workshop for Proposal 1.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, that's a great point. Yeah, there is, and I'm glad you mentioned that. There are several workshops, and I can't tell you the dates. I want to say the 20.
There's a meeting March 23rd today.
Yeah.
And then there's one Monday, March 30th at Roseville City Hall, from 6 to 8:15, and it's on Gratiot and Roseville.
Right. So there's information on our website, but there are, and I think that's from Michigan. Is it from Michigan State Extension?
Yeah, and SEMCOG and the Citizens Research Council, they're pretty nonpartisan when it comes to evaluating those things.
Yeah, so there are seminars and information available, and that's a great point. Thank you.
I can answer your question pretty simple. 1% sale, if it goes through, you get a 1% sales hike on everything you buy. And I might have this number wrong, but it's either 23 or 28 cents, I can't remember. Your gas tax is going to go up by that amount. It's either 23 or 28 cents at the pump, and then you're going to be paying double what you pay for your car fees right now. And then there's hunting fees and all this other stuff that people get that are going to double. So basically, the average, some people have done some numbers. The average family, I guess, is going to be out about $793. And depending on who does that research, sometimes it's $600, sometimes it's $800. You're going to be paying more. It's that simple. Is the easiest answer.
Yeah, I think a point of clarification, you'd mentioned an additional tax on gas, but the sales tax is being removed from that. So I don't think it's fair to say.
If anybody watched on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, I believe, the governor was on Fox 2 News Edge or whatever that program is. They have that one program, Let It Rip. And you have to listen to Charlie LaDuff take on the governor. That's all I got to say. It was a classic. He looked at him and said, "So you're raising the taxes by 28 cents or 23 cents, Governor?" And the governor sheepishly says, "Yeah, that's what we're doing."
Relentless negative action.
I would recommend anybody. It's about a 24-minute video, very informative. I would go listen to it on Fox 2 News.
What it amounts to is 1.2 is gonna go to the.
Yeah, but hold on.
That's all.
Is there other board comments?
Mr. Verkes, can I respond or make a comment before you take a vote on closed session?
Sure.
The board's allowed to go into closed session. I'm comfortable with the law, but I don't know all the facts of what's gone on here in the last couple of weeks. The board's allowed to go into closed session initially like it did last time and say, you know what, we're interested in bringing a proposal to the firemen. if the firemen are interested in responding and there's an update to give the board, that's an appropriate reason to go back into closed session again, because it wouldn't be illogical to discuss in front of the firemen what we're doing with respect to the contract negotiations. If it's not going anywhere, I'm gonna advise you in closed session that we don't have a purpose in closed session. If there's talk about layoffs and things like that, that's subject of a public hearing held in open meeting. So we couldn't talk about those things in closed session. So, that's the law. I don't know the facts, but that's how we'll handle closed session.
Sure, understood, and I think you typically, or not typically, you always do a good job of telling us when we get off topic to say, hey, guys, the closed session that we're here for is X, and we need to keep the discussion centered on that, so.
Okay.
If there's no other discussion, I'd be looking for a motion to enter into closed session to discuss negotiations with IAFF firefighters, Local 1737.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. Caproll, is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Tominello, at 9:11. Mr. Witt, will you, discussion, board members? Is there public comment?
Thank you. When your discussion about the roads and the money, it's before you.
I'm sorry, this is specifically about the closed session.
I know, but I want to throw this in there before you go to closed session. Gasoline was 10 cents a gallon in those days, and Eisenhower put the interstate highway system.
I'm sorry.
US 25 was Gratiot Avenue.
Right, okay, but we're specifically here, to discuss this motion, I apologize.
That's all right.
Any further discussion, board members? Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Caproll?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. York?
No.
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Verkast?
Yes. Thank you, board.